More dangerous than this? Absolutely not.
Isn't he going with our evidence?
I will give you pictures today.
I have a concern. I would highly encourage no one practice the art of firebombing, please.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the proposed action?
That's not rebuttal. Looks like we have Ms. Edwards. State your name, please.
Yes, good morning. Sonia Edwards. I'm with the Westwood Area Chamber of Commerce. And this building, as you know, burned in March. We had our Paul Bunyan Festival in July. We were really hoping the building would be completely demolished by then, because in addition to being a fire safety hazard, which is the most important thing, it's also, it just looks awful. It's in our downtown area, and it's right next to the community center, and it's just in the work. I have to disagree with other people's statements. It's the worst thing in Westwood. It's just a terrible safety hazard, and it's an eyesore, and it's got an abandoned car. I was wondering, why wasn't the car at least taken out of there? Yesterday I drove by, and the car actually had junk on top of it. So I don't understand why, if they're cleaning it up, we have a program in Westwood to get rid of abandoned cars, and yet since March, the car, I don't know if the car was there in March, but it's certainly there as of yesterday. So I would just like to say that something has to be done. I don't care who does it. And I feel so bad for the family. I mean, that was a terrible thing to go through. But it has to be cleaned up, and it has to be cleaned up soon. And that's all I'd like to say. Thank you. Oh, I don't think there's any questions, right?
Yeah, if you want to speak and
Yeah.
support.
Can I ask a question?
Of this witness? Because that's what it would be for. It would be questions of Ms. Edwards at this time. We're still taking evidence. We're in a public hearing. It's a
Well,
formalized
for-
procedure.
Okay. No, I forgot it. No. What can you do to stop other people from ransacking that residence? You've got too many other people involved and coming in there and doing strange things, and I don't know how this lady can keep up with it. You
There's
don't
nothing
know.
I personally can do, no.
Thank you.
I knew she couldn't answer it.
It's the best kind of question a lawyer asks.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak in support of the proposed action?
And perhaps to take rebuttal from the department. That would be the opportunity, yes.
I would just offer the following. There are color photos of the pictures in your packet available if you want to see them on the screen, and also that the building official is here if you have questions of him in rebuttal to these things, as well as a code enforcement officer. And also something that wasn't in the packet is a field inspection report by Officer Heatherton that was done on July 14th. And basically it says that approximately 1250 hours on site for a follow-up progress inspection, no apparent change, no one on site at the time of inspection. Structure and site remain hazardous and open to unauthorized entry. And follow-up will be a second citation by mail, as the whereabouts of the Hansons are unknown at this time. So I offer this.
Very good.
Sorry, July 14th. And that's all I have to offer, unless there's questions again on the time frame of the photos. Officer Heatherton is here. It would be our position that the dates on them are correct. There are different dates. The intention of the different photos is not only to show cluttered debris, but the extent of the burn on the structure. So that's why there's different photos at different times.
I have a couple questions. So the we issued the demo permit at 12-month one in March, but there is legal reasons we could act if the people don't do it, even though they have a permit for a year. Can you just speak to that? I think that's important, because
well,
otherwise, yeah, you think obviously you have a year.
Absolutely, and but I'm re-summarizing what you just said, which is accurate. You have a year on a building permit, and the demo permit is a building permit. However, and the right thing would be We asked them to demo the building after the fire. We sense that there's urgency. Nothing happened in a month. We wrote a letter saying we're concerned about the lack of progress. And basically, although there's testimony to the contrary, that some work has been done, we don't really see very much happening. And we think that it's of paramount importance that we get this done before winter hits. And that's really the long and short of it. I can rephrase it, but this body has the authority to abate a dangerous situation, and that's what we're asking you to do. Really, the demo permit at this point doesn't really have a lot of relevance, as it wasn't acted on in a timely manner, so now we're acting in a different capacity through an abatement process.
Does the permit indicate, other than the expiration date, that it needs to, move quicker than a year? I understand it needs to be taken down, but it's just, if I was got a permit to do something, and I look at the expiration date, you would, common sense would just, you would think you had 12 months in which to do it.
The permit doesn't indicate a time frame.
Other than the expiration date.
Other than the expiration date.
But
But there has been other correspondence.
Yeah.
There was follow-up, as I said, we followed up with one within a month, saying that we want to see this happen, we're concerned it's not happening.
But then, like say if the people would said, yeah, we're getting there, but I have a year, then what do you say?
I'd say what we said in the correspondence, and as all the follow-up indicates, that we started posting the building because we indicated to them that it was a matter of urgency at that point.
And we're within our legal rights to
Absolutely.
jump in, even though the permit says.
You have the authority to act under the abatement provisions of the county code to order the abatement today if that's the pleasure of the board.
Supervisor Klein?
Probably for council, if we have a chance to debate it today, let's say we said, no, we're not gonna do it. And in the meantime, next week, next month, a small children lost their life in there, would the county be liable for not taking it up? If the county had cleaned it up, the loss of life would not have happened. Are we liable?
I'm not one to want to exaggerate on that kind of a question. So my answer will be a very classic lawyer answer, and that is possibly. Sorry, I mean, that's hard to predict how that would play out, but certainly if someone got hurt on the premises, it could cause someone to think that a failure to act on the part of this board was in part responsible for that child's injury.
Supervisor Chapman?
Yeah, I would like to ask that at some point, I'm not sure where it would fit in the proceeding, but there's been several references made from both sides as to the building officials communicating to the fire department, or communicating to the property owner, or communicating, to the code enforcement or around as to, what they can and can't do. So rather than having other people's interpretation of what the building official and or the code enforcement officer, I'd like to hear from them what they said at what time to the property owner, to the fire department, to planning, to the board, whatever it may be, because the versions don't match up that we've been listening to, and I'd like to know what they said.
Thank you. Did that? Thank you. I'm sorry.
Eileen Spencer.
I have a question for Maury. Is the house boarded up at this point?
I'd have to defer to our code enforcement officer, but I think there has been times when it was. It currently is not secured from entry, and I can call the officer.
I went by there this morning, it's all boarded up. It's
Okay,
been boarded
so
up.
I really want to stick to the process here. We got a witness, let's ask him questions. If we want to make statements, let's reserve that for another time.
All right, are there any other questions?
Well, if Mr. Anderson, I'm not, he has made reference to
Yes.
to these folks, so I don't know if he's planning on introducing those individuals to.
Is it my?
It's your prerogative. If you're the department, you can present that witness if you want or
Let
not.
me call Officer Heatherton to the stand.
Ask
ask a question prior to that?
Yeah, before he starts, the property owner has a question of the witness. Mr. Anderson, please answer the question.
You had him bring in some other paperwork. Do you have a March 28th letter that stated in there so I can, because that's one that says you informed me of what was to happen. I had asked in the office for information of how to do it, a pamphlet, a flyer, what to do. And the reason that it started late was because I didn't have the finances to start tearing it down because it said continuous.
We can get you a copy of that letter, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Call officer.
Oh, also, if there was a fence put up around this, a cyclone fence, would that abate a child walking in there? Would that stop a child?
That's not my answer to have, it's the building officials.
I beg your pardon?
The building officials, and he's here, he can respond to that question. Call Officer Heatherton, and please swear the officer.
Step forward. Right hand.
You swear the testimony that you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Officer Heatherton, the property owner has asked a question regarding to unauthorized entry and if the building is preventing that. When's the last time you were at the site and what is your answer to that?
That wasn't what I asked.
Last trip I took out there, I believe, was August 22nd.
And was the building secure from entry?
No, it was not. There were crude attempts to board up some windows, but they were inadequate. And then there's the issue of the property, a corner on Main Street. If the building goes down, it's not really going to confine itself to the property. I mean, it's going to go where it wants to go.
In regards to the photos that are in the packet, there are some differing dates. Can you explain why that is?
Basically, as an indication of the clutter that was there before the violation, before the fire, there was a violation. This folder goes back 2010. So,
what is that folder?
this is the Hanson folder, the 2010 056, 211 Burt Street, 125-17202.
And that is a code enforcement file that is in regard to what problem?
Well, it was in vehicles and trash, a lot of trash.
The pictures that were submitted to the board in the packet that had date stamps on the photos, did you take those photos?
Yes, sir.
Did you take all of those photos?
Everyone.
Did those date stamps, did they accurately depict the date that you took the photos?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have no more questions.
Mr. Chairman, and the question I'd asked earlier is I would like to know specifically what was the dialogue between the code enforcement office or the building official to the fire department, to the property owners in terms of, they've been talking about this investigation dealing with some fire, determining the fire hazard or the fire, electrical fire. What was the nature of your conversation with both the fire department and with the property owner regarding that issue?
Initially, the fire department wanted to know if it was safe to go in the building to fight it from. There was an area between the mobile and the building that was added on a later date, and they wanted to go in there to access for fire. Jim and I both went over and looked at it and told them unequivocally no, that nobody should go in that it was unsafe. Then there was another point where they were cutting on the side of the building. There were 3 firefighters, and we advised Mr. Ewing to get them off because it was basically a death wish. They were cutting away the shear, which is going to let it go like that. There is one more inspection that does have to be done prior to any demolition, though, whether it's by us or by Linda. And that is inspection by building, fire department, and the SO to go in and check for injured people or body case anybody might have gotten in there. Other than that, nobody should go in there.
In terms of after the fire suppression efforts were completed, okay, there was a question raised about determining the cause of the fire. And what was represented in terms of testimony is the reason why they have not concluded or completed that task is because you or the building official had directed them not to do it. And it's the basis of that direction is the reason why they have not demoed the building. So that is, to me, is very significant to what our deliberations here are about. So they're being sanctioned for not doing something that you've told them they can't do. And I just want to find out what it is exactly you told them in that setting.
In that setting, I've never spoken to anybody.
About recommending not to do fire investigation to determine the cause and origin of the fire?
Afterwards, no, I've never.
The representation was that you had. Now,
If
if you hadn't, I'd like to know if the building
If
official...
somebody would have phoned and asked about that, what we would have done is we worked it out with the fire department, and you go in with more than one person.
So that kind of a dialogue never took place between you and the fire department, or you and the property owner?
No.
Okay. That's, I wanted to hear.
There's a question, I think.
In your letters that was given to the supervisors, it states in there that you told them that the fire department, when I quoted that, I was stating it out of letters that you had written, or had been written by the county, stating that, I'd have to go through the letters at this point in time, that you told the fire department that the building was unsafe and they could not follow through with their inspection, and it's in the paperwork.
Is that a question?
But my question is,
Thank you.
my question is, so if a fence was put around the perimeter of the lot at this point in time, would that keep the child from going into the building?
Well,
Theoretically.
that's speculation. I mean, it would do a lot. A 6-foot chain fence all the way around it would help, definitely.
I'm
And,
talking for maybe a month's period of time.
well, and if that were done months ago,
But at the same time, when I left your office, when I went into your office and asked you questions of you, your response to me was, no, you have no flyers or pamphlets, and that I had a year to do it, and when I walked out the door. And then in the paperwork, I read that there's a letter of the 28th telling me that it was a dangerous building, and that I had to do this and this and this. But I've never seen the letter from the 28th you brought. My file, is it in the file?
yes.
Okay. Because I never received that letter saying that it was a dangerous building. And why couldn't you tell me when I was in your office? Why couldn't you say, instead of saying, telling me I had a year, tell me that I didn't have a year, that there was hazards there, that there had to be, I had to be asked for that digging down.
You were.
You know, and I explained to you when I was in the office that I had to give the money for the permit first, and that as soon as I had the money to move forward, we would start the
Which
demolition.
was
And that's exactly what I said in
immediately,
your office.
and we were delighted with that. But when the deal is, what you were told is that a permit is good for a year. But we cannot wait a year for this to come down.
And you did tell me also.
And you did say that you had friends with heavy equipment that were gonna come over and help you.
And I did.
And you were speaking immediately.
I told you as soon as I had the money. I am working with no budget.
Is there a question? I'm sorry.
Yes, there is.
Thank you.
Wendell, we do understand that, and we are definitely in sympathy. But what we don't want to happen is for somebody to get hurt or killed.
No, I don't.
That's got to be number one.
I don't want anybody hurt. I don't want me hurt anymore. You know? I just don't understand why, when I'm standing in your office the afternoon of the 28th, I had to get a letter for the same, dated the same date supposedly, telling me that it was a dangerous building and I had to move forward.
Is that a question?
Yes, it is. Why I couldn't get it, why he couldn't tell me, why I couldn't find out while I was in his office. I had to hear months later something that I wasn't told.
You were told that we were not gonna wait a year, that we couldn't wait a year.
Okay, let's,
Yeah. Is the building official available to also give his comments?
Yes.
I mean, I appreciate the code enforcement.
As rebuttal, call Jim Pappen to the stand, building official. Please be sworn, Jim Pappen.
raise your right hand.
Do you swear the testimony that you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am, I do. And I would ask the same question I asked the code enforcement officer as to the nature of your discussion with both either the fire department or the property owner regarding the post-fire suppression issue of inspecting the property for trying to determine the origin of the fire. Can you share what that conversation was?
I wasn't party to that conversation.
So at no time did you ever talk with the fire department or with the property owner regarding access to the property to try to determine what the origin of the fire was?
That's my recollection. Eric Ewing, who was Lassen County OES director, called me while they were still putting the fire out, asked because the building was beginning to collapse, and he wanted my input as to where the greatest dangers were. And I did come.
Now, that was during the time of the fire suppression. But
That's
post that, in terms of, because that has been the testimony to this body, is that after the fire, that one of the major delays for doing any cleanup effort is because they can't clean up until they can determine the origin of the fire, and they have to keep what's there. And they're doing that based on the testimony that you provided that direction to them.
That's not accurate, sir.
That's what I wanted to have answered if I could. And I have one additional question, Mr. Chairman, along that line, is there's been several references to this March 28th letter, but I couldn't find it in my packet either, so is it possible for the members of the board to receive? Obviously, the property owners asked for that March 28th letter, but it would be nice if the board could have a copy of it as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, sir.
Going back to what Jim was talking about, if somebody were to ask about going in and getting an inspection, what would you tell them if they wanted to go see what the cause of the fire was and determine it? How does that work as far as your office and your position goes?
If a fire professional wanted to go in to determine cause, I would not withhold that consent.
And if a homeowner come to you and wanted to get their own private arson investigator, for lack of a better term, how would you handle that?
I would talk with OES, and I would talk with the fire chief, and then I would want to know when they were going and where they'd be headed because of the risk. The roof is collapsed, the second floor is collapsed. When I got there, there had been approximately 85,000 pounds of water put onto the structure, according to the OES director. And so it is an inherently unsafe structure. And I would have concern, but I certainly wouldn't prohibit them.
And has anybody from this incident here approached you asking to have the inspector come look at it?
No, no, sir, I have not.
I never knew.
Okay. Thank you.
Rebuttal. Is there a rebuttal? Is there any questions?
You have questions?
Perhaps you already addressed this. Is there, if so, I apologize, but is there
Your
current?
name, sorry.
My name is Paul Staddy. Is there fire or liability insurance currently on this property?
I'm not aware of that, sir.
Okay.
You're talking about the property that burned?
Yes.
I'm not aware of that, sir.
All right.
You have a question, Eileen?
I have a question. You said that if the owner would bring in a private investigator, they could go in? Do you need to go with them? What is the procedure with that?
I said that I wouldn't forbid that, but I would talk with OES director and I would talk with the fire chief and then coordinate access.
Okay. My question is, if a private owner can do this, why can't you do it? Why can't somebody from the county go in there and do an inspection?
Well, two reasons. Firstly, I'm not qualified as an arson investigator. And secondly, I would be afraid to enter the building.
But you let somebody else do it?
What I said is that I would talk with OES and the fire chief and their arson investigator. That's what I said.
Thank you.
Concerning access to the building.
Thank you.
So I think if there's no other testimony.
There's one other person that I think we wanted and needed to hear from. That's Mr. Ewing, who happened to be on scene that night. Would you please step forward, sir?
And then I have a question.
Yes, yes, sir. Did you get sworn in? I have not. Please do so. Raise your right hand.
Do you swear the testimony that you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You're doing emergency services chief, so was there a direct question or a specific question you had? A few questions. You've heard the testimony. Is there any inaccuracies that you're aware of based on the testimony that you've heard from presented by the county?
Just a few clarifying points is what I picked up on throughout the morning. As far as with the fire scene, when there's a structure fire, any type of fire, the first premise, of course, is safety, human safety. And our job as firemen are to go in there and mitigate that safety, or mitigate that threat, rather. So when you start talking about investigation, every fire has to be investigated. That's just the standard. Every fire is investigated, and every fire department has somebody that's trained to various levels of investigation. So that fire was investigated. It was investigated that day. Now that fire chief, or whoever his designee is, if the fire presents itself as being something above their skill set, they can reach out and have the ability to reach out to experts in the field, which in this circumstance would have been to the state through the fire marshal's office, which essentially is CAL FIRE. And then they utilize their prevention staff, which are trained in arson and bomb investigation, to come in and assist them and then team up with local law enforcement to move forward with that investigation, and that did occur.
That did occur, you said?
That did occur.
The follow-up investigation by CAL FIRE?
This happened during the incident, so that day. I don't know about any fault. I wasn't involved in the investigation, but we did call in CAL FIRE investigators that
So
day.
what was the determination of the origin of the fire?
I don't have the report in front of me. I don't know.
I have a copy of the report.
Typically, what they do with a fire of this magnitude, with this kind of destruction, is a negative corpus. They rule out causes as opposed to going towards one cause. And my understanding is that they could not rule out electrical. That's where they ended up. And that's my only understanding. I don't know exactly what the report said. So, now as far as retaining the building for investigation, we called in the building officials to come look at the building for structural integrity, to assist the fire personnel there for their safety, were addressed throughout the building. They remained at scene throughout that time and after the fire threat had been mitigated. If somebody needed access to the building, whether it was a homeowner, investigator, a firefighter, law enforcement, doesn't matter who, that person is put in touch with the incident commander on the scene and then and/or as expert, i.e. the building official, to say, here's where I need to go, here's what I need to get, can I do it? And that discussion takes place with the incident commander. So if they're allowed inside the structure, they're escorted in there by somebody that has the expertise to know that ceiling's not going to fall on your head and hurt you. Let's see. And to my understanding on the red tag, that does not preclude or stop the fire department or law enforcement doing their job. That is for public